And we are live. Yay.
All right.
Thank you and welcome to Learning from Smart People. I am your host, Rob Oliver, and I am so excited because we are doing a live event today. This is something that's new. It's going to be something that we do this month. This month, we are focusing on the meeting planning industry. My
Mm.
guest today is Jennifer Rondinelli. She is from New York. She's a native New Yorker, and she is a former ballet dancer who has turned meeting planner. She is also the president of the Greater New York Meeting Planners International Chapter, and she joins us. Jennifer, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Been looking forward to this chat.
Absolutely. Well, I am super excited about it too. So let's just start real easy. Can you tell me a little bit about like your backstory and how you ended up moving from a ballet dancer into a meeting planner and kind of how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. So I started ballet when I was 5 years old, and kind of knew right on there that I wanted to be a ballet dancer, and that was my profession. Danced up until I was close to 30. And professionally, I danced from like age 20 to 25. But it came a point in my life living in New York, and kind of being that struggling artist where I kind of needed to make that decision between continuing to really struggle for the passion of it all and for that career or find something else. And so I initially started slow into the corporate world, kind of had to teach myself the computers and kind of just basic, knowledge of corporate America. And I started at Estee Lauder companies. And through that and kind of working this 9 to 5 job, but still trying to continue with my ballet career, at some point, like something just had to give. Working 2 jobs full time almost was a lot. So I stepped away for a little bit from ballet and jumped into a 9 to 5 job. And it just slowly kind of took over. And I liked having the health benefits and consistent pay and so forth. And kind of left the world of ballet. And through my career at Estee Lauder companies, I landed at MAC Cosmetics, where I've been for the past 19 years, in their global education department. And part of that, when I started there was a part of my role that was meeting planning, and kind of end to end meeting planning of sourcing, rooming list, all the things that go into producing a meeting. And I just really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the production side of it. And I then kind of felt like a lot of my background as a ballet dancer and kind of just that team and cohesion of producing an event, a lot of those skills kind of I could apply to the meeting planning. And I jumped in and kind of went back to school, got a certificate in meetings and conference management, at NYU. Took the CMP, and just dived into the whole world of meetings and events.
Fantastic. So let's start kind of from a broad perspective and what kind of trends or what's the current state of the meeting industry from your viewpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know we I think people really want to be back in person. So, from my perspective in the company, at Mac, we're trying to bring those meetings back. But I think, like so many of us, budgets are a concern, and that can be restrictive. So you're maybe balancing in person meeting maybe some virtual meetings, a little bit of both kind of happening, and trying to navigate that. So I think, even through MPI, and colleagues of mine there within the chapter, I think we're all kind of in that space right now of really trying to push to get back to in person, and be more strategic in how many meetings we're doing and how we're doing meetings. But I think still finding that there are some restrictions.
Got it. So, how do you kind of find that balance between virtual, between in person, hybrid, and
Mhm.
then kind of the constraints of budgeting to say, like, we'd love to do an in person, we'd love to do multiple in person events per year, but, we can't with the current constraints. Like, how do you find that balance?
In working with our internal team, it's really, I think, one, what's the content and what are we looking to achieve? So, if it is something, if it's a smaller meeting, maybe not necessarily a meeting, like from my end, because we're a makeup brand, a lot of time we're doing a lot of demonstrations and training, right, on makeup collections and so forth. And so, the best way to understand application, and how our artists are going to work at Counter is really to be in person. Sometimes, though, there's other trainings that you can do virtually, and it doesn't have to include models and makeup demonstrations and all of that. So I think it's really just looking at what the content is and what you want to achieve in the end result, and then kind of making the decision that way.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is you kind of reverse engineer it to
Mhm.
say, okay, what are we trying to accomplish with this in order, and once we have the goal, we can figure out what content do we need to meet that goal, and then what's the
Yes.
best uh, what's the best way to balance
Yes.
the meeting plan? Is it in person, virtual, based on the
Yeah.
content? Am I properly understanding
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Well said. Yes.
Okay, good. I'm just making sure that I'm getting what you're laying down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm curious about this. With you working for a cosmetic company, when you're doing meetings, are are the meetings that you're doing all kind of in, informational meetings for you? Are you doing meetings that are um, you know, are they all for your brand and brand ambassadors? I don't know what you call your representatives, or who are the meetings that you're doing for?
Yeah, so it is, our internal, global teams, our global artists, and primarily our training teams. So with regional leadership, trainers that are in the field, they're the ones that really are the front facing, but they are training our makeup artists at Counter.
Okay.
So our content and our meetings are focused on giving them all of the tools that they need to have, in order to train their artists in market at Counters.
Okay. So maybe let's talk about this. What kind of vendors are you working with in those meetings? And full disclosure, right? So I'm a speaker. I'm a motivational speaker.
Mhm.
I'm a content speaker when it comes to quality. And it sounds to me like most of the presentations that you're having are going to be done by professionals, by in-house experts.
Mhm.
But kind of like what kind of vendors are you working with?
So, I mean, most of our meetings are taking place at hotels,
Okay.
within a hotel setting. We have different, AV production companies that we work with, depending upon the content and what we're looking to talk about. We may, hire, models, model agencies, um, performers from different backgrounds, whether that could be a singer, that could be a dancer. Um, and then a lot of our presentations, though, are done by our executive teams, whether in creative, marketing, product development, education, and artistry. So it's a little bit of both.
Okay. Cool. And let me just ask this: being as you're from New York, were you able to arrange the siren going by to prove the authenticity of your New Yorkness?
I should be, yeah, no. That's just a regular occurrence. Surprising though, I'm speaking to you from my apartment, and I'm on the 20th floor, and it's really interesting. The sirens and all the noises still make their way up very high. Um, one can hear.
Yeah, amazing how that works, isn't it?
Yes.
Uh, so, in working with vendors, I'm sure that you've got experiences both ways with people who are contacting you and doing a good job of it, and there are people who are just annoying as all get out. Can you can you talk about some, give some ideas for vendors as what are best approaches? Um, what are the ways to do it right? And feel free to throw in a couple. Please don't ever do this ideas as well.
um, I mean, I think that I can tend to get a lot of, I would say maybe mass
Mm,
emails, right, that are coming out. I find those a little bit, they're not the best,
sure,
a lot of times. And I say that in the sense, it's such a broad, like I have specific needs, right, for venues. So I want to hear from those venues that I might be able to do business with, right? And learn more what's happening in the industry from those. It's hard when you receive a lot of emails, and I mean they're from maybe a much smaller property or in areas that I wouldn't be able to work in. I get more of those.
sure.
Um, and it's not necessarily like I somehow end up on a mailing list and then it's just this like blast. So that I find to be a little bit frustrating sometimes. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that would.
So, and I think that this is a really important thing to understand and remember. Like for people who are reaching out, vendors who are reaching out, you do your homework, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and find if you're getting something that is personalized to
Hmm.
you, and it's something that speaks to, at least they've looked at the website, they know what business you're in, they know something
Right,
about what you're doing. It's
exactly.
going to make a difference. I'm assuming. Am I right in that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, and I think that that kind of goes really for I would say, not just like from an email point of view, but even from like LinkedIn, right? I mean, like where everybody's like connecting and you're trying to build your network and like so forth. And even sometimes that way, I may get like communications and I will feel like, hey, I'm not sure why, like you're looking to, I mean, if you want to connect, sure, like I'm sure there's something there, but sometimes with some hotel brands or different companies, it kind of just maybe kind of feels like it's just kind of this mass, like let's just all connect, and it's not
Right.
really strategic in that sense.
Yep. And so I remember, like, I'm old, I'm 51, and I remember back in the day when we had a fax machine, right? And the
Mhm.
fax machine would just blow up, and that what happened was they got a list of phone numbers
Mm.
and they punched them in, and then they just faxed the
Right,
exact same piece of paper to all of those different businesses. Um,
right.
and a lot of people do the same thing today with email, where it's a cut and paste email and you send it to everybody. And it's I think the old adage about it was kind of like spray and pray, right? Where you send it everywhere and then hope that something sticks.
Yeah,
And full disclosure, you and I met, we connected through LinkedIn.
yeah,
And when I reached out to you, I was specific about what I was, where I found you, why I
right,
wanted to connect with you,
correct.
and why I thought there was resonance there.
Yes.
And I feel like when you're doing that, when you
Mhm.
have that approach, it's much more likely to make the connection than it
Yeah,
is just to say, I'm trying to, expand my network. How can I
right,
serve you kind of thing?
right,
Am
right.
I speaking
I
properly to that?
agree. Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think that was something that made it easy for me to say yes, to connect with you specifically, as you said, because you were, I think, thoughtful, and there was an intention there, um, and it made sense, right? And you gave a brief, overview of who you were, so it opened up the dialogue, and
Sure.
here we are now. So
Good. And it works. And part of it may be just because you're nice and you're like, well, I mean, but we'll not go into that all that
right.
much. So is and if you don't want to answer this question, I understand. Is the best way to reach out to you by email? Is it phone? Like what are your preferred
Yeah,
avenues of communication?
I would say email. I'm fine with that. I'm still okay with that. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And I think most meeting planners would feel that way. You
Yeah.
don't want your phone ringing off the hook with people who are trying to pitch you ideas pitch you venues that don't work for you, pitch you places that are too small or locations that don't work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
reach out by email and you know
Yeah.
make it personal and um, make it work. Um,
Yes.
so I'm I'm thinking about this. You and I had shared an email about things that you would like to talk about, and you were talking a little bit about some strategies that you've learned in the work that you're doing. You are, you know, the face of or working with Mac Cosmetics, and there's a lot of people who are out there, small businesses, even medium and large businesses that are want to work with you. And do you have some suggestions for them about the way that they conduct their business as far as their branding? I think you had mentioned about it, like the concept of building a personal brand.
Yes. Um, yeah, I mean, I think when I was starting out within meeting planning and events and um, yeah, just kind of learning my way through, I was really, I mean, I was going to like every networking event known in the city. I felt like I needed to be out there and learn more and meet everybody. And, at the same time, it was, I don't want to say easy, but there was something to the effect of you say, like, I say I'm with Mac Cosmetics, and it is a well known brand, right? And that kind of gets the conversation that might get me invited somewhere. But then I started thinking about the fact of like, well, it's fine, but how do I get invited back?
Mm,
Like, and I also want to be, kind of have my own identity in tandem with this brand, so to speak, right?
sure,
I'm trying to build my career and be professional. So I kind of, kind of said, like Mac may get me in the door, but I've got to get myself back into it. And so that's how I started kind of looking at like building my own personal brand. And then looking at it as like I don't maybe have to go to every single event. One, because it also, I mean, I need to balance my life, right? Everybody talks about that work-life balance. But I also started to be more strategic of like, okay, who am I meeting? How is it, helping me internally at my job and for my meetings that I'm doing? And so again, it just was like so to me, it seemed like starting out, it was really important to be out there, but I just really had to be mindful of who am I? How am I
sure.
representing myself? Um, and kind of leading that way. So yeah.
Yep. So my family has a background in the car industry, and I think what you're talking about a little bit is building up your personal network as you build your professional network,
Mm-hmm.
so that in if things change and you end up in a different place, you still have your network of connections, and
Yeah.
they have a loyalty to you in a,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to the loyalty to the company that you work for. Am I properly framing that?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I think it's important to have those and build those relationships, so it's not, they're more authentic, intentional, and valuable. Yeah.
Right. So, okay. I, I I will admit this. I'm a little bit jaded about networking events
Mm,
because I feel like it is more often than not just a pitch fest where no
mm.
one comes interested in getting anything from anybody else. Everyone comes interested in selling everybody else on them. Do you have any suggestions or any tips on networking to so that it is it's a way to grow your business and your brand instead of it being just
Yeah.
a conduit for sales or a spot where you are just doing pitches and trying to
Mm.
get people to buy.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, like if you're doing a networking event, it's like, why are you bringing people together? And similar to what I was talking about in terms of my meetings, it's like just being strategic, right? It's like having a
Okay.
purpose. What's the end result? I mean, that end result could be like, I want to network with 100 people. Well, okay, but it doesn't mean that those 101 are going to show up, because I do think in New York, it's kind of funny because you can plan and kind of project, I'm going to have, you might even get like a full RSVP of, say 50 people, and the day of you may start to get cancellations and that kind of thing, and before you know it, you're with like 20 people. um,
Right.
but again, I just think that like networking overall, it's got to be with an intention, a purpose,
Okay.
and I think that then makes it much more valuable and enjoyable.
Right. And I feel like networking, and I think I've formulated this in my mind now. A lot of networking events, people are going looking for others to serve them.
Mm,
And I think that the real relationships are formed when you're going with an eye to how can I benefit the
right.
other people that are here? What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I think it's a two-way street, right? Networking, you're looking to build a relationship. So I think at the end of the day, most people don't want to be in a one-sided
Right.
partnership. So it's got to be like, you know, both parties having an awareness of like, why are they there? And, I find sometimes, even for myself, like, I'll meet different vendors or, people within the industry, and you can kind of tell though too, I think sometimes, that it's going to be a good fit, or maybe for my meetings I might say, you know what, I know I won't be able to work with that brand, but at the same time, through the conversation, I'm also thinking of like, okay, who could I introduce this person to? So
Mm,
the networking isn't just that like one to one, it's kind of, it continues to expand and grow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I actually think that that's, I mean, one of the things that people have offered on LinkedIn is like, once we're connected, take a look at my network and see are there
Right.
are there people within my network that I can formulate an introduction to so that even if I'm not your end target, at least I can facilitate conversations to help you get in touch with the people that you're trying to get in touch with.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
uh,
I
cool?
mean, I think
Hey,
it's just
listen,
much more positive too, right? I mean,
yeah,
I think that, yeah, I mean, with so much going on, it's like it's good to have fruitful relationships, right? And so, yeah.
yeah. No, I'm all about relationships. I think that as humans, we are created for relationships.
Yeah.
That's kind of my. But in there is also the fact that it's those one sided relationships are no fun, and it's better
Mhm.
to be better to have it mutually beneficial.
Yeah, exactly.
Good. All right. So we talked a little bit before about email and kind of doing your homework. I, as far as the concept, one of the things you mentioned in your email was about email etiquette. Do you
Mm.
have any further thoughts on email etiquette before, from what we talked about before?
Um, yeah, I think. I think it's important to respond to people.
Okay.
And so I know for myself, like I still try to ensure that I respond, you know, within a reasonable time frame, right? Like
Okay.
sometimes you send an email out and then, you may not get a response for a few weeks or whatever. I try to be mindful of that,
Sure.
um, no matter really the topic or person, but I try to get back within like a 24 to 48 hour time span.
Okay.
Um, and I think it's important because then it's just like a showing that respect of another person's time and so forth. Um, I do think it's also important that we're so now, I think, accustomed to being on our phones
Right.
and texting.
Mm,
And, texting can be very short answers. It's maybe things are abbreviated, that type of deal.
right.
I feel that people need to really be mindful that when you are, your email still needs to be that sort of like, you know, spell check and grammar and how you're writing and what you're saying is still really important. And I find it interesting, just like in where we're at, that like sometimes I'm like, did you think you were texting to me or, and it's funny because you think, that it wouldn't be happening, but it does. And so I do think that it is important etiquette wise to when you're writing to somebody via email to ensure it's still coming off like professional,
Mm,
um, that it's phrased in a good way. I mean, I try to be mindful myself. I'll reread things a few times before hitting the send button. You know, um,
sure.
so I think that's important.
Yeah. I, listen, Jennifer, I've really enjoyed our conversation. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that? Is it through the Mac Cosmetic website? What would be your preference?
Typically, I would say probably LinkedIn if they
Okay.
want to connect with me. Um, yeah, not through Mac website. You
Okay.
won't find me there, but
Okay.
LinkedIn is always good, and yeah,
Excellent.
probably the best way.
Well, I will put that link in the show notes so anybody who's interested in
Sure.
connecting with you can do that. The last thing we get to do is my favorite part of the show. It is three questions to
Yes.
establish your humanity. Are you ready for these, my friend?
Sure. Let's
Okay.
do it.
Um, if you were a superhero, what would your superpower be?
I feel, I think it would be like bionic hearing,
Awesome. What would you like to hear?
everything.
Ha,
I mean, I go back to my childhood of like watching Bionic Woman, and like that was just always like she could just kind of walk in a room and like hear from afar like what was being said, what was going on, and I always found that intriguing. So.
fantastic. When you go to the zoo, what is your favorite animal to go visit and see?
Hmm. I love giraffes
Okay.
and probably like the polar bears or like, some sort of bear. Yeah.
I, all right. A, a very reasonable favorite. Last question. Since you are in New York, my kids love to go to New York. One of the things that they're doing all the time is getting a bagel breakfast sandwich.
Mhm.
Do you have a go-to bagel place that you say this is this is the best in New York, or this is the place that makes it how I like it?
So, yeah, I thought about this. And there's two places that come to mind. So, one is called Sadel's,
Okay.
which is down in Soho district,
Okay.
right on West Broadway. And the other is called Black Seed Bagels. They are a smaller chain, pretty new, like the past few years, and they have a few bagel shops throughout the city. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
So, and what is the Jennifer Rondinelli order when it comes to a bagel shop?
Oh, so I love an everything bagel. I'm
Okay,
pretty simple, but everything bagel and just really good cream cheese.
fantastic. Jennifer, thank you so much for being with me. This has been a fantastic experience.
Sure.
Apart from the glitch in the middle with my earpiece, you have been patient, you have been informative, and you are indeed a smart person. To
Thank you.
all of my subscribers and listeners, thank you for being here. And I will remind you that when you stop learning, you stop living. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.